Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. I am your host, Mrs. Pinky, and today I got a special guest with me. It is my girl and fellow conscious conservative leader, AJA Smith. How you doing today, girl?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. Well, today's show is about the importance of Black History Month. And so I wanted to bring you on because we discuss this stuff all the time, and you just have wonderful family history. But before we get into the show, I'm going to just do some pre-show stuff, and I want everybody to look around the border of their YouTube channel, and I have all of my pluggables on there. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, I'm a member of the consciousconservativemedia.net, and this episode is sponsored today by our monthly voter registration drive. We're going to start our first one on February 19th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're going to go to Albany, Georgia, and we're going to do some voter registration, and we're going to have some food, and it's going to be a good time. If you would like to support the work, I'm going to have the link throughout the show, and I'm going to have a lot of little tickers and stuff going throughout the show while we're talking. So, Aja, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It's a lot going on, and I've been trying to keep my peace. You saw about the crack pipe thing going. I said, you know what? I have to pick and choose my battles here. I have to stay focused. And I said, I'm just going to let everybody else do it. But I got too much things going on. And looking into more of Black history, more events, more things that we were never taught, and trying to do a lot of things personally for me. And so that's where pretty much I'm at. I said, y'all can fight that battle on Twitter, on social media. I don't have time for it. I just can't. I can't deal with every little thing. And you just have to learn how to balance your time. You have to learn how to pick and choose. You got to learn how to, when to step away from things, because there's a lot of things going on, especially with me, different personal things. I started up my business. I'm studying for another test to start up another business. So God is good. God is very good.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're able to start up your business and you got so much going on, and then we're working in a network.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little rundown about yourself? I know we did an interview before, and people can check that out if they go to my channel after they like and subscribe.
Yes.
But I want you to just give us a little background of yourself, and then we'll get into your own family history and things like that.
Well, yeah, my name is AJA Smith. I ran for Congress in 2018 and 2020. I do plan on running again this year. So my primary is in June. So I'm gearing up for that. See how that goes. But right now, I'll step back. I already said I started up a business. I'm a United States Airforce Veteran, served during Operation Enduring Freedom. I did deploy to the Middle East. I went to California Baptist University here in Riverside. Go Lancers, if anybody's out there watching. And so I had a great privilege to even go to Oxford. I studied abroad at Oxford University in international economics, and pretty much military life, working as a federal government employee for so long during the Bush administration, the Obama administration. I got out before, I got out the military during the Obama administration. Then I was still in when Trump got elected. So when it came down to politics, I started at the local level. Because there was a lot of things going on at the local level that a lot of us, regardless of political party, we came together and we found common ground to start going into what is really going on in my city. And that's where I learned a lot when it came down to local politics. And so when local politics, it's a beast. It's very time consuming, but you learn so much. You learn about who's donating to who. You learn about the planning commission. You learn about the school boards. We were very active, my small group and I, for at least about 7 years to get a lot of the corruption out of our city, even though it was still here, but we were no longer on the news because we were constantly on the news for something. We had a school board member who ended up being a pimp. We found out he was a pimp.
That's interesting.
He had a brothel out of his house, and we're like, okay, let's get rid of him. So, and different things that went on. But when it came down for me running, I noticed, because our districts realigned. So my former congressional rep, King Calvert, he was very good to us, especially as federal employees and military members. But he got placed out the district, so we ended up with the new guy, Mark Takano. So one thing about Mark, he's, I met him a few times. He's very nice, but that's it. I call him the photo op congressman. And so he ran on, I support vets, I support this, I support that. He didn't support us at all, especially when it came to congressional complaints, because on the federal level, they always say contact your congressman if you have an issue. So it was a lot of things that he was dropping the ball, and a lot of things where he was pretty much not doing and helping us. So I started to go through his voting record because he was prior school board. So I started to do more research in his background. So I was telling a friend of mine this at lunch one day, and he said, "Why don't you run against him?" And I'm like, "What?" He said, "You know everything." He said, "Everybody knows you. Everybody loves you." And I'm like, "I don't know about that." But he said, "Why don't you run?" He said, "You're not going to win." And I said, "That's true. I'm not going to win the first time. But at least I started to expose his whole entire voting record and the things." And he was also the chairman for the Veterans Affairs Committee. But everything that we had an issue when it came down to pay, when it came down to VA benefits, when it came down to health and different issues, he was nowhere in the sight. But he would be like, "Hey, Nicole, let's take a picture. Here's a great plaque." That was it. So I started to do that. And so I did make a name for myself. And then I ran again and I raised more money. I got my sheriff endorsed me. A lot of people endorsed me. A lot of people said, "Wow, we finally see what you're saying, that he is an absentee representative." So that time around was really interesting because I had a whole game plan to do door knocking, deploy a team, but because of COVID hit, we could not do any of that. The state of California shut a lot of things down, and then they pushed the mail-in ballot. So we did what we could. We did okay, but at the same time, it was still a hard election, because a lot of people didn't vote, or a lot of the ballot issues with the election integrity issues. So I put up a good fight that time around, and I said, "I'll see how we do this time around." But what I do tell people is to really get involved in your local, get to know everybody at your local. When it comes to school boards, when it comes to county supervisors, you're going to have to really start getting involved in those meetings. February 15th, they're supposed to lift the indoor mask mandate, but LA County's not. So I've been telling my LA County friends and family, you guys got to start getting boots on the ground to change that policy, because if Orange County's lifting it, Riverside, we never had it because my sheriff said, "We're not doing it. I'm not enforcing it." And my county supervisor said, "We're not doing it either." But when you're in these big cities and you're tired of it, don't run. You got to go in there and fight. Do not run. You got to get some small grassroots groups together and start telling them, say, "Hey, if you don't do this, we're going to fire you with a recall." And so hopefully, a lot of my advice and influence will help get that going. And I'm trying to connect with some good LA groups. And I said, I'll even come down and spend some time and help you guys to get that going, because I was born in LA. So that's my heart too. Same thing with Riverside, but I was born in LA and I love LA, but I haven't been in a couple of months because I'm not showing a vaccination card just to eat at Applebee's. It's crazy.
Yeah, I understand that LA County is having such a hard time with these mask mandates, and a lot of people are getting, the narrative is switching now, and a lot of governors are starting to say, "Let's lift these mask mandates."
Right.
But then LA is like clamping down harder on
It's harder.
a lot of those. So I saw y'all had something going on with a recall. I know we're going to get to the Black History stuff, but can you let us know a little bit about that, because that's
well, Gascon, LA County is recalling their district attorney. So I'm trying to get a contact to see if they need any help or support. I will promote anything to get people motivated to recall the district attorney. And so just trying to reach out to the different committees and even the central committees down there And that's another thing. People need to get involved in their central committee, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I really don't care. But especially on the Republican side, you need to start getting involved in your central committees and asking them, where's the team building? What are we going to do? How are we going to deploy? You and I know about deployment, boots on the ground. So trying to help a couple of people who've been asking me questions. And that's why I started my business. I said, I'm getting a lot of advice for free here. So,
yeah.
so I mean, you know, it's one of those things. I want to do it at the gracious of my heart, but I'm like, I'm spending all my time and I want to do it correctly and build, especially with coalition building. But the gas cone recall, they had to do it over again. So we're going to hope for the best, and I'm going to try to see if they need any assistance. And if I had to spend a week or two or a couple of days out there knocking on those doors and getting that petition to help them out, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, that's actually awesome, and actually, we're going to see if we can work with our organization to help you out with getting that message out and pushing it out. Because we definitely have to fight hard for 2022. So let's go back. This is February, and you know it's Black History Month.
Yes.
Yes, and we celebrate it over here. I don't know about everybody else and what they doing, but that's what we do.
We celebrate it too.
Yes. And on my page today, I've been doing like a daily tweet with different Black history facts that I find through some of my research, or some things that I think that people just don't know. You know, everybody knows certain names and certain, you know, MLK and Malcolm X. Right. So I was like, let me do something different. And today, since I'm an Army veteran and you're an Air Force veteran, I was saying, let's do women veterans that that came before us. And so I talked about the 6888, the first females in the Women Army Corps. And I was like, oh, I got to definitely have Aja on today as one of my female veteran friends. And so you're always talking to us about your history, your family tree, your legacy, where you come from. And I loved hearing about that, but I wanted you to express that on the show so other people can experience that. Tell us a little bit about your family, how they started service and serving, and then how you got into it and how it all connects.
Well, for me, serving was plan W, but it ended up being plan B. So doesn't make that clear. Certain career choices did not work out for me. So I said, okay, let me do this. So my family, both sides, my mom and dad's side, come from a big array of mainly Air Force, but also Navy and Army veterans. So I'll start out with my grandfather, my mother's father. He was my main father figure in my life. He, you know, pretty much he was my dad as well. I mean, my dad was around, but my grandfather was there a lot. And with his mentorship and leadership, I learned from him a lot of things that he had to go through in the military, the good, the bad, and the ugly, especially being a Black man serving during World War II, the Korean and Vietnam War. You would think that because the service were desegregated, doesn't mean you did not experience racism as either. So he actually was drafted in as the Army Air Corps. And so when the Air Force stood up, he decided to join the Air Force. And one of his duties, he told me the story, he had to go to Germany and help liberate the Jews. So being him as a young Black man, he was given the task to, you know, he actually helped with the concentration camp. He said it was the most horrible sight he's ever seen. And so he was also part of the Berlin airlift. And so he just decided to do a full 33 years active duty. And so he started to raise up in rank, which was very accomplished for somebody of his time, because he retired as a chief master sergeant in the 70s, and they were not giving out those E9 ranks to a lot of Black people. And so a lot of the things he told me where he did have to face racism. He was also a gunny sergeant as well in the Army Air Corps, and he said he earned his wings. You know, you get those wings. So he told me a story when he got a first sergeant position down there in Texas, good old Lackland, Texas, and so his sponsor was waiting. And so when he got out the bus, his sponsor looked at him like, "Oh, you're Hawkins?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be the first sergeant. I am Sergeant Hawkins." And he looked at him, "Well, where'd you get those wings, boy?" He said, "Yeah, boy." And
Oh,
this guy was lower ranking than him. Keep in mind that. My grandfather said, my name is not Boy. I earned them, and take me straight to the commander's office. I forgot airman. So my grandfather said, I just barged right into the commander's office. The commander stood up like, hey, he's like, He said, let me set you straight. He said, this is what this little airman called me Boy, and I am a first sergeant. And he said he just ripped the commander a new one. The commander was like, oh, wow. So, those types of things where my grandfather, he said he had to experience where people questioned his duties and they questioned his accomplishments. And he said, I had to fight, but I set people straight. Like, no, you're going to address me as Chief Master Sergeant Hawkins, not Boy or this or that. And he told me, he said, Europe wasn't, because he spent a lot of time in Europe and the Middle East and Asia, but he said it wasn't as harsh, back. I mean, it was, but it wasn't as bad as coming back home and had to go to the South. And here he is, came back home from a mission, but he has to drink out the colored water fountain. And I said, did that ever discourage you for fighting? He's like, no, because I knew one day we were going to get our rights because the civil rights movements were happening. And he said it didn't discourage him because he said, I'm fighting both battles here. I'm fighting deployments, wars, and I'm fighting an issue for racism here in America where I have to drink out of a colored water fountain. I can't sit at the lunch counter. I can't do this. But he said it bothered him, but he knew one day we will have our rights. He will have his rights to be desegregated. So even his Vietnam stories, he faced prejudice, especially with the locals there and how they treated black soldiers. And so learning a lot of that from him, where my grandfather was pretty easygoing, but he will set you straight in a stern way where you're like, I got you. He didn't yell, but he will tell you how to go somewhere and look forward to it in a polite way with a smile. And so that's just the type he was. My grandmother, she was in the Air Force. She joined, her and her brother. They joined during the Korean War. My grandmother wanted to get out of poverty. They lived in the projects in LA. So her and her brother decided to join the Air Force, where a lot of Black Americans did. They joined the military to get out of poverty during those times for opportunity and go learn some skills. So she learned her skill becoming a nurse. So she got stationed at Lackland. She stayed at Lackland. That's where my grandparents met, at Lackland.
Awesome.
And so that's where my mom was born, at Lackland. And so, she said she didn't really experience it a lot, but she saw it because she said, there were some things where, smart comments, especially when she went into town, where people will look at her like, okay, my grandma was Creole. So they're like, okay, we're trying to figure out what you are, and so she would get those. But my grandmother, she said a couple of incidences where she would fight. She said, I didn't care about going to, not complying with those rules. And so my grandmother was pretty much like a rebel. She was like, I'm not standing over here. I'm not drinking out of there. I'm serving, and you're going to respect me. I'm a woman, and I'm a Black woman. I'm a Creole woman. She'll say that. And she said a lot of things that she would just tell people flat out, you're not going to address me either as gal or colored or Negro. You're going to address me as Miss, well, at the time, Miss Smith, until she got married, Miss Hawkins. And so later on in life, talking to my dad about different accomplishments with, on his side of the family, my grandfather Nelson, he served in the Navy. And his brother served as well. And I just found out recently his brothers participated in D-Day, which was really awesome to find out. I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And so my great uncle, Bob Webb, He was a Tuskegee Airman. And so, despite a lot of issues when it came, even though the military was desegregated, but you still had a lot of racial tension and issues in a lot of units, and especially when it came down to the Tuskegee Airmen, when it came down to higher enlisted ranks, you still had to fight to go up in rank and fight for your proper rank. Still today, you and I have experienced that. I saw that. I dealt with that even in my own personal experience.
Yes.
But at the same time, it doesn't discourage me to give up and say I quit. It gives me more motivation to say I'm still going to speak out to make it right. And a lot of people, they give up and they quit, where instead of saying, let me get Nicole, let me get this person, let me get that person, and let's speak out and join together to make the situation correct and right. And especially as being a woman and a woman of color, a Black woman, you know, we have to deal with that. We have to deal with sexism. We have to deal with sexual harassment. We have to deal with, here's all the workload, and you're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to, you know, different things. And so I applied all of their principles and tried to make it suitable and work for me. Now, I'm not saying I did have a great career. I had a lot of great things, but I learned that people knew that if you're going to do this to Sergeant Smith, she's not going to back down. She's not going to cover. She's not going to hide and run and keep her nose down. No, I spoke up, but I also documented. I learned how to go up the chain of command. I learned how to get other people say what you're doing to her or me or him is wrong. And so it came down where that really motivated me to run for the federal level, because I saw a lot of issues later on, because this is still during the war, where a lot of minorities and women, we were still getting mistreated. So of course they said, go to your congressman. He didn't care. He didn't care. It was out of sight, out of mind, or I don't know what's going on. Can you explain it? Okay, we explained it to you 50 million times. So let me run because I get it. I can tell where something is wrong and solve the problem. So when it comes to the military and my family's background, oh yeah, one of my aunts, she's passed away. Everybody's passed away now. She enlisted as well, her and her brother. And this is on my dad's side, and she became a doctor. She retired lieutenant colonel, and I have her in my pictures as well. I didn't add my great uncle or a couple other people, because you try to do that photo collage, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But I tried to do is to highlight the people that I find that, you know, I'm carrying on their legacy, where this is a different time. We have bigger voices, especially as not only as Black Americans, but as a Black woman. And so, because we still get the short end of the stick, and even as a Black woman who serves, because a lot of women who served, and especially a lot of Black female regiments, they still have not gotten their recognition. And that's one thing I said, whether I get elected or not, I want to help fight for them to get the recognition that they deserve, especially during World War II. There's a lot of Black women who served during the Civil War. There's quite a few who served during the Revolutionary War, where I'm still trying to put those faces out there so people can learn their story. Okay, did they get the right rank? Did they get the right everything and accomplishments that they deserve? And that's what we have to do. Even if you're not elected or not, you can still push for them to be recognized because of all their great accomplishments. We have fought in every single war in the United States. We have fought every single war. And there's still people that still haven't been recognized for their accomplishments. And that's a lot of times, you know, I like to focus a lot on the military side, because it shows how far we come, but how much more work we need to do to get those recognitions. And so when it comes to making sure, you know, if there's still living descendants, if there's family, if there's the rank that they didn't get or the proper medals or recognition, we can do that. We can start our own coalition and start promoting them and have our own our own club, our own organizations, to make sure that everything that they fought and died for, it doesn't go into some type of bliss where they will never be recognized.
Yes, and that's what a lot of times happen. I know a lot of people talk about, why y'all can't talk about history all year long? Why is there a Black History Month? And so that is a good segue with your last comment into the topic for today, which is the importance of Black history. Now, we
Right.
covered a little bit about it in last week's CCMN Twitter space, but I want to delve into a little bit more as far as the political aspect and the political gamemanship with this topic. So why do you think, first of all, talk about why you think it's important, and then we're going to talk about why do you think it's such a political football between the sides or pundits, influencers, things like that?
Well, it's very important. And yes, it should be taught year round. There should be no issue to be taught year round. I grew up in California, so being taught Black history is different than somebody in Texas and Florida, Iowa, and Wyoming. And that's the thing. And that's where people I know, they say, well, I was taught that. Well, I wasn't taught that. And if I was taught it, it was at home. Majority of Black history starts at home. All of our history starts at home because of our parents, our grandparents, and even great grandparents. I knew my great grandparents. Well, my great grandfather and then my other great grandmother, and just learning from them and all the stories when it comes to Jim Crow and redlining and different issues. You learn that at home, and then you go to school and then you hear a biased view. You're like, no, that's not what happened, because my uncle experienced this or my aunt experienced this, and they say different, correct? So when we want to talk about other people's histories, you have people that will come into the school and talk about experiences. And I love it. I love to learn about everybody's history, but I feel that we get the short end of the stick deliberately because people don't want to hear the uncomfortable truth of what really happened. And trust me, there's a lot of great positive things that happened throughout our history, but there were also a lot of rebellions or riots and different massacres that happened too, that in order to understand what went on and what's going on, you're going to have to learn it at some point in your life. I had a discussion with a friend a couple of days ago, and they said, wow, you've been putting up great things. And I said, but they said, we didn't learn none of this in school. We didn't learn about Nat Turner. We didn't learn about this person. We didn't learn about Booker T or the Harlem Renaissance. I had to go, well, I went to junior college after high school, and I had to take more Black history classes because I felt short end of the stick in my regular history classes, because we learned the basics. We learned about Rosa Parks, Dr. King, and Civil Rights Movement and Civil War. That's it. We don't learn about anything else. And not to knock anybody, okay, maybe a blurb of Malcolm and Garvey, and that's about it. That's what you learn and what I remember learning. And that we were all savages. Our ancestors, our descendants were savages. Even the Native Americans, they were savages, and they were slaves. They got freed in 64. But we never talk about the in-between. We never even talk about the parts, because you're from Baltimore, right? That's where my dad's from.
Yes.
We never even talk about, no, there were also people who were free. My family's from, my dad's side is from Baltimore. I'm a descendant of Basil Biggs. You can look him up. My dad was named after him. And he was born free. He was a free man of color, and he participated in the Underground Railroad. And plus, he was a veterinarian. So he had some land after him and his wife, Mary, got married. Yeah, Mary got married. And so they had 7 boys. And so the Civil War is about to break out. So they used his farm as part of Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg. And his farm is now a Civil War site. And I said, this is the coolest thing. I'm related to somebody whose farm was part of the Civil War, and he was a veterinarian because I love animals. So maybe that's where I get it from. And he was part of the Underground Railroad. So when they came back, it was Union and Confederate soldiers was dead everywhere. So what he did was establish a government contract and hired the locals, mainly poor whites and blacks, to help bury. And so that's how he made money, because he did a contract with the government. So on his farm, that's where a lot of the people were buried, because of my descendant Basil Biggs. Now he had a son named Calvin Biggs, who is my grandfather's grandfather, my great grandfather. So that's how that family trickled down on the East Coast, Baltimore, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. And so just learning about that, I said, this is amazing. I'm actually related to somebody who you can Google. And you're like, wow, this is, and they're part of the archives. And so when it comes down to my mother's side, my grandmother's side, I don't know if people saw me tweet, or you saw the couple of tweets where I learned a while back where both my great grandparents, they were going to get lynched at one time, because they were from Louisiana. And so they were from Natchitoches, Louisiana. It's not Nacogdoches, it's Natchitoches. It's Indian. It's up north. And so my great grandfather, Pops, he was working for the railroad, and he got into a fight with the white man because he called him the N word. I'm not going to say it. I'm not trying to be like Joe Rogan here. Everybody trying to pull you off of whatever.
If they don't dig up what I've tweeted before.
Right.
Right.
But the guy called my great grandfather the N word. My grandfather said, no, I'm not. So he whooped his ass. So of course, when he did that, guess who came? They were going to lynch him. But luckily, some family and stuff got my great grandfather out of town really quick. So he laid low for, I think it was told for like a week or two, then for everything to settle down. So another incident happened with my great grandmother. When I was told this story, I thought of The Color Purple when Oprah hit that lady, because my aunt and my uncle and even my grandmother told me the story a few times. They said, "Yeah, our mother slapped a white woman because she got, well, back then, sassy with her. So my great grandmother didn't tolerate it anymore. So she literally hit her really hard and slapped the crap out of her. And of course, they were going to come lynch her, and they had to get her out. Well, she stayed a little bit longer. They took her to another town. And my grandmother, she said it was scary because it was just her and her older sister. And of course, my great grandfather, who wasn't home, he had to work. So they had to watch over all the kids and make sure that they were safe. So they were going to lynch her as well. And so things settled down. Then she had a cousin who, I forget his name. No, her uncle. I forgot his name. And he went into town, the market, and they accused him of stealing fruit. I think it was an apple or a watermelon. I can't remember. And they were going to lynch him. So they had the road ready. So Mr. Williams, because they all lived on J.S. Williams Plantation in Natchitoches, Mr. Williams had to go down there and calm everybody down and make the excuse. He's slow. He didn't know. He was like, don't lynch him. He just didn't know. He made up everything so they wouldn't lynch him. So they finally let him go. And the story was that he never left the plantation until he died. It really trumped, because they were about to hang him right there. And so that's traumatizing. So they said he never left. He never left the grounds, nothing, because he said, I'm not going back into town. So when you hear those firsthand and stories, you ask the question about Black history. It starts at home as well. And, to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, especially in the school setting, for people to understand everything that we had to go through in our family, and to say these things really happened. People really did die. People got lynched. I mean, you can even watch the movie Mississippi Burning. I mean, Rosewood, it's all out there. But at the same time, we should too promote the positive things. I like to post inventors and educators and great things. But I said this month, because for the past couple of years, I try to only post a positive. I said, I'm going to start getting into like the Cincinnati riots, the Seminole uprising in Florida, and different events that happened during slavery, but in so-called free states, like in New York, like in Ohio, like in up north. Because when you learn Black history, you only learn about the South. We never talk about what happened in California. We never talk about how Oregon did a ban for Black people could not live there. California did try that, and I'll post that later on this month, but that didn't go through. You don't hear about the lady that I posted, Miss Elizabeth Jennings Graham. She was one of the first, or the first Rosa Parks, and her attorney was President Arthur, who was a Republican. And it's like, so when you start putting these things out there, I have to say this to the Republican Party, you need to start reading and researching and saying, wow, this person was a Republican, that person was a Republican, this person. So what's the issue when you find out, like with Miss Graham, quite a few people I posted to, Alan Chatsworth, he founded Chatsworth here in California. He was a Republican. He was a delegate for the Kentucky convention. And I'm like, so what's the problem for mentioning these things? And I'm not saying we only focus on the Republicans, but look at the accomplishments, because they go align with with the conservative principles, correct? They overcame. They did struggle, they did fight, they went to court, they used the system to try to make it better. Some things were not better. Look what happened to Rosewood, look what happened to Wilmington, look what happened to Tulsa. And we always talk about free enterprise and economics, but look what happened to us when we did 5 steps ahead, but the system pushed us back 10 steps behind. And that's where I really wish that the Republican Party, the Republican base, the pundits will look at this as a learning tool to move forward and to make it correct, especially when it comes to policy. I posted where, I'm sorry, I'm memorizing names at this point in my life, and today it ain't happening. But I even posted what happened in Manhattan Beach with the family. They got
the Bruce family.
They got their land back. It was worth now $75 million. So you can't say that what happened to us, but research on what did happen, especially how the government took away our rights, they took away our land, they burned down our towns, but you still trying to figure out why we are not at the top. Well, to me, we are at the top. And I tell this to people, I feel that we are, but at the same time, we keep getting pushback from both sides to stay and to focus to go back up to the top. I know some people may not think that makes sense, but I feel that I am at the top. I am pushing my family's legacy by saying, I know what they had to go through. I've been through it, but I'm going to make a better difference in my area, in my community, in my life, and help a lot of young people understand by telling these things that faith and perseverance really put me where I'm at today, in learning the struggles and the positives, not only with other great Black Americans who, sued here, did this here, started the school on water. Hey, if they can do it, we can do it, but we're going to have to be more organized. So when we do get the pushback, we know how to fight back and bring up those certain points of history. Say, you did it to this person, you did it to that person, but you're not going to do it to me. And that's where I want to start to develop later on in life, and especially teach a lot of younger people. I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for them. And to teach them, saying it may look rough, but let me help you. Let's study this person. Let's see how they overcame it. And let's fight even 10 times harder than they did, so you can have the benefits and the glory and the grace as well.
Awesome. That is actually true. And that's why even though I'm conservative, I feel like I believe in the Constitution, the idea of the republic, the individual. I served
Right.
in the military. I'm patriotic. I wore the flag. I have a folded flag from little girls who sent it to me in war. So it's not like I don't check the blocks of every little conservative, but it's like when you get to I'm black, it's like pump your brakes, hold up. You can be a woman, you can be a taxpayer, you can be married, a mother.
But this is the beauty of it with conservatism. If you really look at it, we've always been conservative. We've always, it was probably never called conservative, but we've always been some type of conservative way. And if you ever read the book, what's that book called? Let me look real quick. If you ever, I have a book list I had to use on my phone.
You have to keep up with all those books you have.
I do. I had to take screenshots. Rediscovering Black Conservatism by Lee H. Walker, which is a great book. Unfortunately, he passed away, because I was going to try. I did contact, and they said, no, he passed away. I was like, oh. Aww. Yeah, he passed away a few years ago. But Rediscovering Black Conservatism by Lee H. Walker is really good. Where he talked about, Booker T, he talked about different events, how the church could be more involved. And it's a good foundation point where you can shape it into your own life, you can shape it into your own community and how you want to do it. And so the importance of Black history is for everyone, not just us as Black Americans or white Americans, but I feel everyone and around the world to know we stayed and fight. We stayed and fought in this country. I have to say, I was in some very interesting Twitter spaces. I felt like I went to space and came back. It wore me out. No, let me tell you. It because I wanted to listen and observe. It was with Mr. Tariq Nasheed. Tariq. And so it was an issue of how, I'll just do a brief. I know he has the recordings on his Twitter, but it was really interesting and disturbing how other people view Black America, that we've never fought, or we never did this, or we never did that. In people's perspective, and I'm telling you, there were people from Africa were saying, well, you guys didn't do this. And it's like, no, we did. And he was breaking down all the history and said, we've been fighting here for a very long time. And so I understand, because, they probably didn't know American history or American Black history like it should be taught. But it was a guy that got on there, and Tariq has it on his YouTube channel. He's Italian, and he said, I'm an Italian third generation family, but he made a lot of derogatory remarks regarding Black America. He was from New York, and his perception was that if it wasn't for his group, when the Black America in the North would never have survived. And I said, what? He said, well, if it wasn't for us and the Irish, you guys would have never survived in Chicago and New York and these places. And Tariq and I was sitting there like, is he really saying this? Do you know we have Black people in Chicago? Actually, Chicago was founded by a Black man, first of all. And we had Black people in New York and different places before for a long time. And you can go, I think Tariq has it on his YouTube, where he had to tell him, said, no, you're wrong. And for, I can excuse for people who weren't educated here and don't know much and they live somewhere else. I get it. But for somebody who's been here in the educational school system, that's what I'm saying, that nobody is learning all across this country on where we went and how we contributed and how long we've been here. I mean, I think it was like the 1850s there were black people here in California. There were black people in Kansas. There's black, we were all over the place, not as a bigger group. And of course, the bigger population was the South, but we were in New York. We were in Ohio. We were in Cincinnati and in Chicago and all these places, because his excuse was, well, if you look at the pictures back then, you don't see black people. Well, I'm like, of course they're not going to take no pictures. You're going to see them in Harlem because of the Harlem Renaissance. But I knew what he meant because, of a broad commercial book, you don't see it. But that's why I started to dig and found Miss Elizabeth Jennings Graham's story, which was, during the time of slavery where she sued, but she was in New York, and I was very disturbed what I heard during that whole entire week of that space. And I felt that even though a lot of people were not from here, but to hear how people view Black America, it was very disturbing. And it was to a point where I see people fighting over the book of Ruby Bridges. And I said, do you not hear how people view us? That we've never accomplished anything. And it sets a precedent that we were only slaves and Dr. King, and that's it. Everything that we invented not only impacted the country, but it impacted the world. Everything that we fought for, everything that we, like I said, we served in every single war. We served overseas. We broke barriers. We did so many great accomplishments just as Black Americans, but people still have this negative mindset that we've never achieved anything based on what they see on TV. That's a negative view. And I feel that my duty from this day forward is to really push that no, we've done a lot more than anybody and we paved everybody's way. So you're going to have to give us the credit where it's due, correctly and properly. And not to say that I'm against anything, but you're going to have to start learning and understanding a lot of things that we had to do. It paved everybody else's way, and especially after 1964 Civil Rights Act, where we welcomed everybody to come here, and especially trying to educate everybody. But don't say that we need to get over things. No, we don't need to get over things. We need to really push and educate people what we had to go through and still go through, because I'll be honest with you, we never ran away. Everything we could have left. We could have just packed up and went somewhere else to live. But running away that's something that we did not do. And we still fight the good, the bad, and the ugly, still going to the military, still going to these corporate jobs, still trying to make our own new Black Wall Streets. But people should respect and listen and understand everything that we had to go through, which paved a lot of people's way.
Yes, a lot of the times I feel like some of the influencers just don't know, and they don't want to admit they don't know because they have such a platform to uphold. Because I think about when they say stuff like we need to bootstrap, and I'm like, sorry, but some of the first Black families down in the South had 6 airplanes when planes were just new. They were Black families that were giving out loans to poor white people in certain communities. There were free. Some people did leave, and then they went to Sierra Leone and found out it was colonized. Oh no, it was racism over there too. So like there's so much.
And a lot of people don't understand when the South lost, the former slaves had to teach the white people how to farm because they didn't know how to farm.
Because they were doing it. And so some people did stay because I don't know, whatever reasons, but like I tried to tell Coach, she's from California like you, and she came to Georgia, and we didn't think, because we're used to living here, that they turned a lot of the old plantations into businesses and buildings. Some of them didn't get knocked down at all. You'll just go to a hotel and it looks like a plantation. So she was in Albany, I think, for the first time, and she was like, "Oh my God, oh my God!" And she was having. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, we didn't warn you." And I'm from Baltimore too, so we see the harbor and where they used to sell slaves. So
Yeah.
it was like second nature to us. And you brought up a good point talking about different locations, because like the North will always say, the South had slaves and y'all are racist and da da da. But the North benefited from slavery. They had
They did.
insurance companies that
And,
put insurance policies on
sure.
Southern slaves and
And
things
they
like
built
that.
Wall
So,
Street off of it. And I
right.
tell people it's a lot more when you want to learn Black history, don't learn it with your cognitive dissonance. Do it with an open mind, read uncomfortable books, challenge yourself. What I learned, was that true? And one of my favorite literaries is James Baldwin. And he said, if I love you, I have to make you unconscious of what you see. And so to me, that was like the best quote ever. If I truly love you and I want you to learn and I want you to expand beyond your thinking and challenge what you just learned, you're going to have to dig into saying, wow, I didn't know this happened and this was dreadful. I didn't know that this whole family was burned and lynched because of whatever reason, and it happened down the street from my house. And we only focus on the South, but we never talk about the rest, what happened in the country, and even slave rebellions. And that's where Tariq was saying to the guy on his face. He said, well, you guys never fought back. He said, that's not true. There was a lot of slave rebellions in the South, especially in Florida. They burned down a lot of plantations and they left, or they stayed. And there were slave rebellions in Louisiana. See, I've been to plantations. My grandmother took me there for educational purposes. She said, this is where our family's from, J.S. Williams Plantation. Then we went to Oak Alley. She said, I think we have some relatives that were slaves here too, but let's go to Oak Alley and let's go check it out. When I went to tech school in Mississippi, now I'm telling you, that was a culture shock, because I'm driving or on the bus going downtown to the mall, big old Confederate flags waving around. I'm like, oh crap, oh, okay, got the Confederate flag on the license plate. So, but I said, okay, I know where I'm at. And just like in Mississippi, I experienced it. I went to the gas station one day, put some gas in the car, and I saw a cute little girl. She had the cutest country accent. I chuckled because of the way she was talking. She was the cutest little thing. And so the lady behind the counter, she looked at me like, you better stop laughing. She said, what you need, gal? I said, oh, okay. I know my place here right now. So I thought it was harmless and innocent, but when she said, what you need, gal? You better stop chuckling and laughing. And I'm like, okay. Even when I went to the mall, what you need, gal? This is in the 2003. What you need, gal? I said, okay. All right. I know where I'm at. Louisiana was a little bit different because it's like pretty much everybody's related to everybody. So if you do something wrong to somebody said, no, that's your cousin. So everybody was related to somebody, especially where my family was from, Natchitoches and a couple other small towns. New Orleans was very different, very educational, seeing the Confederate statues. And my grandmother told me, learn the history of it. Going down to Bourbon Street, should have been down there, but we did anyways. I was a kid, but to go to the French Quarter and see all of that history and saying, wow, because my family, my grandmother's mother's side, their surname is Christophe. And so our family goes back to Haiti. So they came over after the Haitian Revolution. And so that's why a lot of Haitians went to New Orleans, and that's why they call it Little Haiti. So learning about that history, different things in New Orleans, it was a little bit different experience, but I was little. And I still have cousins down there. And I said, I'll try to make it down there. And they said, you still have the issues, but not like other places in the South, because if somebody's going to be racist towards me, we got the same surname. It's like you just discriminated against me, and I'm your cousin. So that's pretty much. But there was still some racism even when I was a kid and we went down there. My grandmother, we drove from New Orleans all the way up north and had to stop in little towns, and we got those snarls, those snarls like where y'all going and everything else. And hearing those stories even from my great uncle who lives with me, that's why people say, well, it happened so long ago. But I'm like, well, my mother was born in Jim Crow, so how long ago do you think it is? I got my great uncle who's 80 something years old living in my house. My grandmother was 89. She died 2 years ago. So how long ago is this? And so listening to those stories, even after the civil rights, for them going back down to visit relatives, they said it was still a lot of issues. And, they knew where to go and not where to go. And, those sundown towns still existed.
So I'm going to shift a little bit because we know the talking points of some of the Black influence. We know about the Prager University video about what we should or shouldn't do, which I think is very just her opinion. I think everybody is an individual, so we should be able to do whichever we want. But you were in a Twitter space and you were talking to I can't remember the people's names, I'm sorry, but you were trying to tell them the importance of learning history, and they were very disrespectful and they were pushed back. I was in there listening, and I almost can say they were triggered. And I felt like they either didn't know how to respond because they didn't know the history, or they were just trying to push their own narrative. That's why I say we should have our own spaces instead of just going into other people's spaces, because they are trying to get something out of their spaces and we might not know what that is.
I like going to other spaces because I do listen. So, like I said, I was in that week-long space. And it was very interesting to hear how people viewed us. I would say, that space experience, it was very disrespectful, but I got my point across. And with the PragerU video, to put the young lady up there to just put out a video and say, it's a waste of month, it's a waste of time and everything else. Yes, she does have an opinion, but I look at her as somebody who just needs to really understand the history behind this month. Carter Woodson, and you posted and I posted too. Number one, you're PragerU, you're Republican. Carter Wilson was a Republican. So I'm going to put that out there for you guys. His whole thing for Black History Week was to preserve history. Because, like you said, we were not being taught history. And let me see if I can find that quote from him. When it comes to what happened in that PragerU video, okay, here's the quote from Carter Woodson. Oh, wait. Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished, lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history. For PragerU to do that, and they're supposed to be educational, they have many educational videos, correct? Many educational videos. I mean, when I first came across PragerU, I was like, okay, this has a lot of education on here. That's great. Communism, socialism, whatever isms, they're out there. But for you to come out as a educational university and to have this young lady saying this is a waste of time, a waste of month, and I couldn't watch it all. You're being hypocritical in what you stand for. You're being contradictory, because if we are never to forget certain points of history, why are we the only group that's being targeted to dismantle and to forget and to get rid of how we celebrate history? Rather, we all agree it should be celebrated all year round in school systems and everything. But the problem with that, if we do that, we start putting everything into schools. Black history is American history. You can't have one without the other. That's impossible. then you get the pushback. Well, it's too harsh. We don't want to show lynchings. We don't want to show this. Why do we have to show the young boy holding the sign that says the N word? Well, that's what happened. That's what happened. That's what happened to a lot of people, especially in the Jim Crow South. Well, why do we have to show the harsh histories of slavery? Because it was harsh. People were getting whipped and hung and lynched and burned and killed in family separation. It was hard. So what part do you want to show? What part do you want to teach? But then you complain that this month is a waste of time. So we have a dedicated month, just like everybody else. Women's History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, LGBTQ Month. I forgot what other months there are because I lose track. Why do you always pick on Black American history? If you don't like it, nobody's forcing you to celebrate it. This is America. It's a free country. And I even told this to some of my Black Republican friends, some of them. They said, I get it, Aja. You love to push it, but I think you're posting too much. Then don't look at my post and you can unfriend me for the rest of the month. You know you can unfriend me the rest of the month because I'm going to do me and you go do you. And when I saw that, that shows the lack of respect. It shows the lack of education. It shows the lack of trying to honor and trying to say, okay, I'm a young person. And it scared me because I'm like, she's the future. And you're trying to dismantle of everything that we built up and what Mr. Woodson built up to preserve our history. So what if it's a month, the shortest month? There's a reason why, because he wanted to commemorate Douglass and Lincoln's birthday, who are two prominent people when it comes to us as Black Americans, especially Frederick Douglass. He is our forefather, regardless if he's a Republican or not. He is our forefather. Because if it wasn't for him, Lincoln would not have freed the slaves. See, a lot of people need to dig into Douglass and learn Douglass. And learn Dr. King's real teachings, not just one speech. He made more speeches. Learn more about Malcolm X. Learn about a lot of people. And for a university to come back and say, well, you say this, and because if we say it, we're going to be called racist. So if we put a young, she's a cute girl, Black female, to say we need to get rid of it, you're being used. Stop being used. Have integrity and say, I'm not saying this, and don't subscribe to it. And that's where I see us on the right are using a lot of young, aspiring, very smart, everybody's smart, Black conservatives who are being used to be these puppets to start talking and bashing and thinking you're owning the left. No, you're no better than the left because you accuse the left of doing the same thing to Black America, and you're doing the same thing to us as Republicans and as Black Republicans. Stand on your truth. Have integrity. Don't try to bow down to a crowd to make a paycheck. I could have made a lot of money during all these years. I could have been a grifter, but I have integrity. I am not out there selling the book and calling Black Americans trained monkeys like somebody we know. Or every time a young Black man gets shot, you got a Black cop on the Republican side that says it was his fault. We all could have been grifters, but I have integrity. You have an integrity. Everybody in our group has an integrity. Said, no, we're not going to sell our own people out just for a paycheck. And that's where I'm glad you had me on, because it's been frustrating for me for the past 5 years that I've seen so many great, vibrant, wanting to learn and get into politics and grow into politics as young Black Americans, whether you're Democrat or Republican, but mainly on the Republican side, stop selling out for a paycheck.
It's also not working. If you look at the ROI of the shift, it's shifting, but then it always stops. It shifts a little bit and you see some prospects of it, and then it stops.
It's getting worse because we have social media. I understand everybody wants to be on TV and everything else. I can care less if I'm ever on TV. I can care less. I'm going to do my part in my life how God made me to do. I'm going to follow his steps. But for a lot of young people that I see that are coming out, this is kind of bright, that are coming out and doing these type of things, you're being used. Stay true to yourself. Learn why we have Black History Month, why we celebrate Juneteenth. It's just the same as why we celebrate the 4th of July. It's the same thing why we celebrate Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Nobody said it's limited to 1 month. You can celebrate it all year. Start your own organization as a curriculum. Start an online school and do it. But there's reasons to be behind for everything. And we live in a free country. We can do whatever we want to. And like I told somebody the other day, I'm not going to mention their names. They privately messaged me. And I said, go do you. If you don't like it, you can unfriend me. I really don't care, because I'm still going to promote the way I want to promote and keep pushing because I have the grace of God. And I want to get people out there to know that there's more to us than what you learned in school and by pundits and media, that we only have 3 parts of history in our lives and what we've done to shape and to accomplish here as well, just like everybody else. So if you want to go make those videos for those organizations, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have to face it one day in your life when you get older. You're going to realize, why did I do that? You're going to have to ask yourself, was it really worth for me to do that? And how can I correct it? And they grab a lot of these young people to do it, just to be famous, just to be popular, but have some type of, would my grandmother approve of this? Would my grandfather approve of this? Would a family member who went through Jim Crow and redlining and every discrimination, would they approve of me saying this? And that's where it comes to, even, and I'm not going to, I'll say flat, spirituality. Is that the right thing to do for you to do, to say what you just said in that video? So when I saw it, I was very disappointed, especially from an organization that calls themselves a university to educate. They should have been educating better on why we have it, and to highlight Dr. Woodson, and say, we're going to put something out every day or every week to highlight great accomplishments of Black America.
Exactly. And I felt the same way, because
sorry, I got a little passionate.
It's fine, because I was thinking about the same thing. I was thinking about how, like, we, it always seems like it's us. Yeah. Dennis Prager of Prager University is Jewish. And if we said something out of line, that they will come down with the rain of fire of heaven on us.
And see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. My grandmother was a director of nurses, majority of her career. And I remember the owners of the hospital, they were Jewish. They would tell me so many stories about how they were in concentration camps. One of her bosses, he was very old, but he said, I was a little boy and he would tell me stories. I remember in school, we would have Holocaust survivors come. I remember just interacting and going to events and saying, wow, I want to hear this person's story. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I learned. I tell people, what is so afraid to learn about Black America? I've learned from Asians, not only Hawaiian culture. I've been to Hawaii many times because I was in the military. I even went to the palace there to learn everything. Everywhere I go, I'm making a point to learn. If there's something to see there, I go learn. It could be a little well. Maybe somebody famous drank out the well. I don't know. If it's a plaque on there, I'm going to learn. And I'm going to take a picture of it. I guess I'm just that type of a nerd. But I learned. I was pushed to learn. My grandmother and my mother and my grandfather and everybody, because my great-grandparents were illiterate and they could not pretty much read or write. They had second and third grade education. My grandmother said, my grandmother graduated her master's degree at UCLA. She said, you're going to learn. You're going to get a degree. Whether you use it or not, you're going to get an education. You know what I did in summer school? When school was out during the summer, I had to do book reports. Encyclopedias, pick a topic, pick a book. You're doing book reports. And my book list is very long. And I was made to learn. I was made to learn about everybody. And when you're trying to say, well, I learned about you and what happened to your culture, what happened to this and what happened to that, why are you so afraid when we start saying, well, this happened to us? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's becoming to a new light of denial, of not wanting to understand and to wash away our history here in America. I mean, I can get into what went on in Egypt and Kemet in the deliberate burning of the Library of Alexandria. That's a whole nother show topic. But why are you so afraid of what we have done and accomplished and fought here in this United States? But we're patriots when we go to war for you. We're patriots when we put on a uniform. Like I said, I come from a huge military family. Cousins, pretty much about 70, maybe 40% or 50% of my family served. But we're patriots when we fight World War II, Korea, Afghan, Iraq War, and D-Day and everything else. Oh, wow, they're a great patriot. But when they had to come back home, they had to drink out of a colored water fountain. But you don't want to hear about that. I mean, I could sugarcoat the whole entire history, but that's a disadvantage to know the hard truths, the uncomfortable truths of when my grandfather came back home and he had to report to Texas. He was called a boy, and he had gunny wings, and he was a first sergeant. He had to drink out of a colored water fountain off the banks. Or if he had to go to a different southern state for whatever reason, mission, I don't know. My grandfather, he took everything to the grave with him, what he actually did. And I respect that. But my great uncle was a Tuskegee Airman. He still had to break barriers and fight racial segregation. But we fight your wars. If it wasn't for a lot of Black Americans joining the Union would have never won the Civil War. I want people to understand that. If it wasn't for a lot of runaway slaves and Black people in the North joining the Union, the Confederates would have won. So think about those numbers. But you don't want to teach that in history. You don't want people to know that we've overcame and still overcoming so much, and we're trying to make it better with policy and running for office, and we're trying to make it where we can thrive ourselves like every other group that's come here after us and after 1964 Civil Rights Act. And that's where these organizations on the right, if you want to have a full understanding, you're going to have to stop being in denial of what we've done and start to really shut up and listen without a biased view. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'll let you say it because somebody got to say it. I feel like it's craziness because it's like, come on now.
Yeah.
We have holidays. We don't do this with any other culture. We don't say, talk about July 4th in the middle of winter. Like we don't say, oh, that's old news when you bring up George Washington.
Right.
But history just gets this, and I think it's because some people don't understand how the history can connect to still have pro-American or this country is still our country. They think that, oh, here we go again, talking about the negativity of what is America.
You have to talk about
the history that when we had the most white supremacy, when we had the most against us, when we had so many things that was to tear Black people down, we still persevered. So today you're saying police brutality, poverty. Oh my God, no. Your ancestors still built. They still drive. They still were doctors, lawyers, teachers. Like the guy you said, when we talk about school choice, that's why I threw him out there again. We talk about school choice again. Missouri tried to outlaw Black people learning, and then he said, all right, I'm going to go to Mississippi River. We're going to get this education. Frederick Douglass is so revered because in Baltimore, he couldn't read. And he said, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I didn't let them tell me I can't learn how to read. So I learned on my own. I didn't wait for the government to give me permission to read. So there's stories inside of this. And, the thing I find funny now is that when you see, white conservatives getting targeted by the FBI, when you see them going through the mask mandates.
We told y'all the feds. We told y'all about the feds for how long, but nobody wanted to listen to us.
The feds even mess with Martin Luther King, but I digress. I was saying the history can help y'all too.
Yeah, Hoover, we told you the man was crooked.
With Lincoln and Frederick Douglass work together, and that's why we're trying to bridge the gap. So what do you see us doing like in the future to make things better? Because it seems like, they think, oh, y'all just complaining. And no, we're solutions oriented over here.
We have to keep building what we're building, what Conscious Conservative Network, what King is building, what everybody is building, what Rod is building, what I'm building, what you're doing with your platform, what Sunny's doing with her platform. We have to keep building and showing people how to build, showing people how to get in their community. And I tell people, I know everybody don't like doing interviews and different things. If you're a good writer, write a book. If you like doing interviews and talking, I'm not a good writer. I still want to write a book, but I'm just not a good writer. But I'm going to still try to write a book or two later on in my life. But start YouTube channels, start educating people. We have to find creative ways to come back and say, no, that's not exactly what happened. Let me tell you, and here's the historical truth. And like Sunny said, voluntary association. Start getting groups together, join our group, whoever's group, and start saying, how can we build and keep building to counter the opposition? And our opposition is both sides. It's not a Republican side or a Democrat side. Our opposition as Black Americans is both sides. So if you're even a Black Democrat and you're watching us, you're going to have to start challenging your side as well, as much as we challenge our side. I can't keep throwing stone at a glass house, and then I'm like, oh man, why did this person say this? I can't complain about my neighbor's trash cans and I got weeds in front of my house. That's not how I grew up. My grandma said, don't throw stones at a glass house. Make sure your room was cleaned up before you go criticize somebody else's room. Make sure your teeth are brushed before you tell somebody that their breath stinks. That's how my grandma rolled. And that's what we have to do in a way where we're saying we're building and we're going to keep pushing to say, you know, like Rod says, look at Terry versus Ohio, look at Cruikshank, look at these Supreme Court laws and cases to change policy. And I tell that, you know, especially with young Black Republicans, especially new Black Republicans, stop going with these narratives. Start digging into the Constitution and these different how these policies came out, because you're going to get more respect, especially in D+ something districts, where you're going to say, hey, we're going to get,
Sorry, I think we're having a little technical difficulty. We'll see if we can get her back in a second. We've been doing this for about an hour and a half, but while we take a quick break, I want to let you know about what is happening with the Conscious Conservative Movement on February 19th. We are actually going into Albany, Georgia from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're going to do some voter registration drives and a food drive. And we're going to...
Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We got your back.
Okay, I'm like, hold
up. We don't have your visual just yet, but we just have your audio.
Okay. So to really start getting people involved in building their own coalitions, to really start building and helping other people build, so we can really have a great, not a pushback, but a great significant stronghold where we say, you know, we're strong in numbers, we're deep. Here's where we are when it comes to policy, when it comes to history, when it comes to economics. And that's what we really need to focus on. And to start educating all of ourselves about how this system of republic works, because we live in a constitutional republic, and how to make sure that we're leaving not only oral history, but everything is documented. Everything is you know, passing the torch to the next generation. And not only for us, but teaching everybody around us. Because like I said, I was listening to those spaces with Mr. Tariq Nasheed, and how, you know, I can't say that the people who live overseas, they should know, but the man that lived in New York, who really thought that we didn't accomplish hardly anything in this country, that's where the problem lies with me. And to have this perception of, you know, if it wasn't for one group, a set of people, Black Americans would have never survived or anything like that. I think he has that space on YouTube or part of his Twitter. And it was very disturbing, but at the same time, it made me think about how to revamp a lot of things that I want to do in life, not just this year or this month, but in life, and to get out there and be more vocal and to help people to be vocal as well, to counter these perceptions about us, especially after slavery, even during slavery, even when we were in New York and different cities up north, of what we were going through. Because we focus on the South a lot, which we should, but we need to start expanding on what was going on in the North with us, in the Midwest and on the West Coast.
Awesome. Do you have anything else that you want to say to leave us?
There I am.
Oh, there you go. That's the pretty face I know. Okay.
I know what
But I
happened.
know we can talk about this for a long time, but I
I
actually
want,
want
I want to leave off with this Frederick Douglass quote.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite quotes.
Excuse me.
He defined patriotism as this: the best friend of a nation is he who most faithfully rebukes her for her sins, and he, her worst enemy, who under the specious garb of patriotism seeks to excuse or defend them. So what he pretty much said, if you're the best friend of the nation, you're going to have to rebuke the sins and face the sins of what went on. But if you're going around and pretty much not, how can I say it, rebuking it or being truthful and honest, you're not the friend of a nation. And when I read that so many times, I said, wow, this is what's going on for a long time, where people say, well, we know there's sin, but we don't want to talk about the sin. Well, you're going to have to talk about the sin. It's like reading the Bible. You're going to have to talk about sin. You're going to have to talk about everything. You can't pick and choose which part you want to talk about. You got to read all of it. And so when I read that quote, and I even told a friend of mine this, I said, you can't always call out one side and not the other side. You can't even go around and saying, oh, we're hunky-dory, there's nothing going on with us, we're a peachy perfect family here in this country. No, we're not. No, we're not. You're going to have to call it out, whether if it's your friend, whether if it's your own party, whether if it's, you have to say, this is wrong, and we're going to call it out. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be just a person who's a citizen and believes in the Constitution. If there's something going on either side that we're all saying, no, that's not constitutional, you're going to have to call it out. The Constitution does not apply to one side or the other. It applies to all of us American citizens, regardless of party, regardless of race, and regardless of gender. And if I see something wrong, you see something wrong, or Ross sees something wrong, we're always on it. We're saying, nope, that's not constitutional. Nope, you live in a constitutional republic. And this goes for a lot of people who want to get into politics, especially people who want to run for Congress. You're going to have to really start studying the Constitution better, because I see a lot of people don't know the Constitution. You're going to have to study it better and understand the foundations of the Constitution. And especially if you're running as a conservative, you need to stop running as a faction conservative and run as a principled conservative. We can have another show on that about factions. I think we did touch on a space, but I like this better, because you're growing bigger government. You're becoming status. You're becoming populist. And you have conservative on your profile. You're not a conservative. You're a status.
Oh, we say status with a red hat on. Or progressive with a red hat on.
And another history fact is not part of Black history, but as a history fact, progressivism started on the Republican side with Teddy Roosevelt.
Sure did.
And if you're definitely a Black conservative that wants to run for office, I suggest you really start following us and learning the history and everything that has went on and still going on to learn how to fix it. When it comes to policy, you're going to have to ask yourself, am I even running for the right office? Because I see some people running and they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to do I'm going to fight for potholes. No, sweetheart, that's a local level issue. It's not a federal issue. Potholes are local level. They're not federal level. They're not. I'm not mentioning no names. I already made some people mad at me. I really don't care at this point because none of y'all pay my bills. So
I keep trying to direct people to the right. They be like Biden. I be like, no, your highway suck. Go to your local
it's
city.
your local.
Go to your township. Your
It's
police,
your
go to
local.
your mayor. You don't like your cops, go to your AG. Like, so, I mean, it's a lot about education. That's why we do so much education in the network. And I think I'm going to pick up a more teaching, trying to teach little things in my blog.
I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start incorporating that with my business. I'm just trying to get some other things that I want to incorporate and really get out there and do coalition building. Not only teaching, focusing a lot, but going to organizations and helping a lot of organizations. Like you said earlier, they have this recall going. Hey, I got 2 recall experiences underneath my belt. And we did it. We really did it. We pulled together and we did 2 great recalls in my city a while back. We didn't care if you're a Democrat, Republican. We said we got to get these people out of here. And so that's what we did. And so I leave this with everybody, and especially all of our conservative cousins and step cousins and cousins twice removed. You got to start looking at what's being put out there on mainstream media and ask, how is this even productive or counterproductive to keep bashing and to have these little snippets and to really, like I said, think out of the box, your cognitive dissonance. Start challenging what you're being told to see if it's true or how does it beneficial with these same talking points. If we tweet something, retweet it for us and we'll retweet you and we'll have a great dialogue because trust me, people watch my tweets a lot. I can say that for a fact. I get some hints around and they said we like what you put out, but at the same time they said you're kind of harsh, and I said okay, I'll try to tone it down, but I may get riled up again after this month. I'm just trying to keep my peace this month.
They don't mind people who riling up. They mind what you're saying. They say they like free thinkers. They say they like independent thoughts.
No.
They say they like all of that. But then when you say something they disagree with, then it's like,
you don't like free
follow or don't follow her, or they'll send their people after you. So I don't know how much true that is.
But you got to go back to philosophy. And my dad, I can say, he was a great philosopher. My dad was a Democrat. And it was funny because when he started to take note, and I told him I was heavy in politics, he's like, "Oh, you're a Democrat?" I was like, "No, I'm a Republican." Oh boy. But he would debate me and I would debate him. I remember one time we spent 12 hours on the phone and my mom was like, wow, I debated him, he debated me, and then he made me debate on a Democrat point of view and he debated on a Republican point of view. 12 hours. And that was one of the biggest moments of my life with my dad. And he said, if you can debate both sides, you got it, kid. And I said, thanks, Dad. And 3 months later, he died.
You had to prove he could go. That he could leave.
I had to prove to him that I had to prove to him that I was good. Well, I had to prove to him that I can analyze. I can analyze from outside looking in. And he said, "You got it, kid."
I don't know if I told you this, but you made Black history too, girl. So I know we tend to think of the past, but now you added on to your legacy. Now you one of the family members who served, and you serve in your community. So that's why I tell people. I mean, it's not just Black history now. Like
actually, I did make Black history when I first ran in 2018. I was the first Black female Republican to win a primary and to make it onto the general. So
that's what I'm saying. We're making history now too. So it's not just about the past. That's what people don't understand either. It's about what we're doing in the present and what we're setting up for the future.
It's inspiring not only us in the younger generation, it's inspiring to me, everybody, that despite, my life growing up single parent home, um, I'm Gen X. I had to learn, a lot growing up. I was a latchkey kid, but I had two strong foundational Black women in my life. And they worked very hard and made sure that I didn't lack, but I appreciated. And I had the best father figure was my grandfather. And to learn from him, and of course, my uncle, he passed away a few years ago, cancer, very young, who taught me how to drive. But I didn't let any of the stigmas or stereotypes of being a single parent kid to hold me back. I had to work 10 times harder. And, when it came down to responsibility and learning and doing great things, I tell people too on the right, stop bashing single parent households. Because a lot of us adults who grew up in one, we had to learn how to work 10 times harder to beat the odds. You look at Dr. Ben Carson, you look at Senator Tim Scott, you look at myself. We had to work harder. And to stop using that narrative that Black men are not in their child's home, which is already, already debunked. Adrian Norman, really great guy. He did a video on it. And I saw another lady on TikTok. If I find it, Nicole, I'll send it to you. That the CDC put out recently that's not true. Just because the mom and the dad are not married doesn't mean that Black men are not in their child's home. They even said 70% of Black men are in their children's lives.
Yeah, they changed the how it's written.
Right.
So yeah,
and I can say my parents were divorced, but was my dad there? Yeah. He was one of those dads. But I knew my dad. My dad would come around, hey, happy birthday, kid. Hey, then a couple of years later, a month later, or 3 months later, that was just how he was. It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me at all. And so I had my grandfather. I had my uncles. I had my dogs and cats. It didn't bother me. It really didn't. And it made me grow stronger. It made me appreciate a lot more and to say, I'm going to make everybody proud. But most of all is I'm going to, whatever obstacle, I can overcome it. And I tell people, I said, stop using, first of all, stop being in people's personal business. If they didn't work out, they didn't work out. There's a reason for everything.
A lot of times people stay together too. They probably shouldn't be working out. But I'm not going to be in their business. But
yeah, it's like, okay. All right. But, I really enjoyed this. And overall, if people need to learn when checkers and chess is being played. And I emphasize that. I think I'm going to write a book on it. I've been debating that. Checkers and chess. When we see things on mainstream media, I'll say it, the Joe Rogan, the Whoopi Goldberg, that's checkers. But in the meantime, we got troops going over to the Ukraine.
Yep.
So let's start thinking mainstream media. It was an old program, which they still use today. It's called Operation Mockingbird. Go and read the book, look it up. And ask yourself, what are they trying to hide from us? You got Whoopi Goldberg one week, and a couple of days later, Joe Rogan. I haven't tweeted or been bothered with it because I'm on other news networks trying to say, okay, are we going to go into World War III with Vladimir Putin? That's my concern. And I know people who may see this say, oh, you don't care what Joe wrote. You know how many times I heard the N-word and been called the N-word? I'm just saying.
I basically tried to say the same thing. I probably don't know how to do
I don't like it at
180
all.
characters, but I think that's a distraction, though.
It's a distraction.
Because the reason is because most people already know how they feel.
Yeah.
And we all know that they dropped that because they were mad at Joe Rogan.
That's it.
We all know that Rogan knew he did it. He could have, came out ahead of it or whatever.
And I had to tell a friend that too the other day. And she said, what you think
about distraction. COVID's supposed to be the most important thing. Poverty's supposed to be school. We were killing it with school choice, and we're not talking about school choice anymore. We don't even talk about what's happening to the bills and everything. We're talking about the trucker convoy, but now we're talking about
and that's another thing. I said, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the truckers. I'm looking at even in the state of California, LA County, they're not even going to lift their mask mandate. That's a constitutional violation right there. And y'all worried about somebody call somebody the N-word, but I've been called the N-word and every other word all my life. I don't like it.
We said the right thing on Twitter. We might get called the N-word this week.
My grandparents, I've heard that. I've heard it all.
I think people don't understand how they're playing us in like priorities. I'm not even saying that it's like.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's a non-issue. It is an issue, but I may wake up and I live in the state of California where I'll probably have some stormtroopers like, okay, we're going to get you because you're going to have to get the shot. I don't know. Tomorrow's not promised. It's in scripture. Tomorrow is not promised. And I said this year, I'm going to really pick and choose the issues. I can't get distracted on checkers where I'm trying to play chess. Would you rather be a rook or a pawn? And I'm going to find that tweet I did on that. My Isaiah Washington posted it and I retweeted it. But I get it. It's like you look at some of these words people use. You remember that tweet I did about etymology? People don't even know what conservatism is. And I said, don't they teach the root words or word history anymore in school? Apparently not. And I tell people that I said, I can't get distracted with Hollywood that much any longer. I have to do what's well for my area, my state, and the constitutional republic. And that's where I said to a couple of people, I can care less. Hollywood is Hollywood. Hollywood's been that way for a long time. Hollywood was putting people in blackface. Hollywood was, doing a lot of things derogatory towards the Black American community. And why is it a shock? The only way to make change is to get a lot of people who are in Hollywood to make that change. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm not trying to be in Hollywood. And, I can't say that. God may lead me to something different. I don't know. But Hollywood is going to have to step up for Hollywood. I step up for the Constitution, the Republic, building economics, teaching, and trying to do the best that I can. But I can't fight all these battles that people have going on social media. Because at the end of the day, your average voter, and this is for a lot of people who are running, your average voter doesn't care at all. They're just trying to put food on their table and get gas. And especially for you candidates that are running in these heavy D districts, they're trying to just put food on their own table, have a safe place for their kids, and stop, all the different stresses in life. So when I see people talk about this, and especially the pundits, you're not helping America. You're actually just act like we don't exist, especially middle class and lower class America. I don't care what race you are, what ethnic background or religious background. You're not really talking about the hard issues of America. California, we have the highest homeless population, and people who've been watching the news that, you know, how the trains have been vandalized with all that trash. I want to give a shout out and thank you again to Scott Pressler. Scott is a great example. I wish I could have made it down there. I would have met you. I would have met you down there and helped, but I couldn't make it. But things like that, we need to pump up, you know, saying, hey, we have all these issues going on. And like I said, I stayed out, and I'm going to stay out the Joe Rogan and Whoopi Goldberg thing. But I tell people, especially the media who focuses on, I mean, seriously, when we log off of here, might probably something different. Your average person, your average voter is really looking for you to hear their voice and to listen. And they're tired of electing people who bicker and fight just to get on TV. They want people at all levels of government to understand that they're struggling and that they really just want to have a peaceful life. And you, as a candidate, you look at your own life story and your own life history and your own background, and you just talk to people normal. And that's what I always do. I get out there, I listen to people, and they ask me, oh, what do you do? This is when I was running. And I said, I'm running for Congress. They said, oh, wow, we never had nobody that took the time to listen to us. It's listening. It's listening. You can have all the polls and think tanks all you want, but that young couple, that older couple, that middle-aged couple, that young kid, they're the ones that need somebody to listen to, because they don't even watch the news. They don't even watch national news. They turn on the local news to see what's going on, and they turn it off, and they're trying to put food on their table for their kids and try to help them with their homework. Or they're working 2 and 3 jobs and they don't have time to watch the news because they're $1 short for their rent, and they may get evicted next month. So just try to relate to people. And that's all I got to say.
Awesome. You did an excellent job of surveying your history and talking about these things. And, you know, we could talk about this stuff all night long, but I really appreciate you joining the show.
I appreciate it.
Yes, and everybody can follow you at AJA for Congress on Twitter. Yeah. Do you have any other places, or you just want them to follow you there?
Just follow me on Twitter. Facebook, I really don't do too much. Facebook targeted me again. I got restricted again. I don't know what I posted. I got this big old warning sign, you're restricted. I'm like,
maybe they found you on Twitter.
Right. Instagram is AJA for Congress, AJA Smith for Congress. I'll post some stuff on my Instagram, mainly on Twitter. And hopefully within next month or so, I'll be doing this too, and start interviewing and getting people on and start having real conversations instead of on a Bird app that you're only limited to certain characters. So
yes.
So I tell people, you know, this keep up the fight. You know, this find a niche that you're good at, because the con is still there. The con is every day is a new con, and so always know between checkers and chess, and don't be afraid to say, I want to learn Black history, which is American history, and it changed our country significantly. And form local groups. Get out there and get involved in your local community. Get group of moms, group of dads, group of whoever. Start going to the city council meetings, because I'm telling you, like Sonny says, the government closest to you controls you. Tip O'Neill, all politics are local.
Yes, and once people get a hold of that, they'll really take over.
Yeah.
And I'm praying for you guys in LA and in
Thank you.
California.
Thank you.
And hopefully everything will work out there. And we needed prayers over here in Georgia, but
I'm praying. I'm monitoring your stay. I saw some interest.
Yeah, a lot of people think
dropped out
about the midterms, but that is going to tip on how they're going to move forward with working in the South, depending on what happens here.
Real quick, what the Republican Party really needs to do, even grassroots, you guys got to hit the economics.
Yes, we're trying, and that's why we're so adamant about Albany, because a lot of people don't even know why we pick Albany. Well, one reason, that's where King's program is. But Albany has a high poverty rate. It has a high.
I pray to God. I pray to God that I will be positioned this year soon, and I'll make a trip down to Georgia. I will come down to Georgia.
And we'll try to make sure we all get together when that happens.
I will come down to Georgia.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for staying for a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. We're going to have more episodes Tuesdays at 7 p.m. You also can join us at consciousconservativemedia.net for a one-time lifetime fee of $25. And you also can find me all on my social medias at Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all those things. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much again, Aja. I see you later, and I see you guys next time on Miss Pinky Thoughts.
All right.